Catus Maximus here, this time with just a quick little pocket knife review. I actually saw this in the store for $20. This is the Kershaw Zing SS 1730 SSX. I believe that's the model number, and then I guess on knives they name them, or at least Kershaw does. Kershaw, as far as my understanding, is, I don't know about quality knives, on the internet, and when it comes to knives, there's this endless debate about brands and specific materials used, and so I'm just much more of a general consumer. And far as I know, that Kershaw is definitely, better than Harbor Freight. We'll just at least put it that way. What attracted me to this, and your mileage may vary, because I know that in various parts of the world and even in the United States, things like these knives, which are assisted opening, spring assisted opening, may not be entirely legal. Spring assisted is different from a switchblade or a stiletto. A switchblade or stiletto is a knife where it has a double-edged blade and it shoots out from the front. And those are illegal most places in the world. There's obviously several countries where you can't have them, but man, there's probably billions of people who live in areas where any type of spring-assisted, and particularly switchblades and stilettos are, and in the United States, are totally illegal. But where I live, I actually am in an area where both spring-assisted as well as just flat-out stilettos actually are legal to purchase. I do not have any stilettos. I've seen a couple, but they were like $300, so no thanks. This was $20 on the shelf, and it's the first spring-assisted knife and actually the first Kershaw I've ever had. And when I saw it was $20 and it had like the stainless steel body, it does have a plastic insert in between the two halves, but otherwise it's all stainless steel. I thought it looked pretty nice, spring-assisted, and for $20 I thought it was a pretty good deal. So let's take a closer look at this. They do advertise the steel as whatever, the 8CR13 MOV. And then there's some warnings, standard 3H blade, warnings about the spring assist, and a movable pocket clip. So the pocket belt clip is only held on by 2 screws, although I would like to see 3. That's not such a big deal. It can be moved from both the top to the bottom and on either side of the bottom, so 3 different positions. I do like that they have several screws through here, and then they have like a little press fit pin up here, and then the blade holding screw. What I do like is it's blind, so there isn't like a fastener right there, but there is a fastener on this side, so it's real smooth. And it does have a little finger lever. So spring assisted, and how it works is I actually have this Harbor Freight knife, which is their Harbor Freight Tactical. To tell you the truth, I've been actually pretty satisfied. This thing, I put a lot of use into it. Surprisingly enough, the phenolic resin is very tough. That's actually brass that is rubbed off onto the quote-unquote plastic handle on this knife. So it really is phenolic resin that's fiber reinforced, and it's actually held up pretty darn well. Even the belt clip is now started to stay a little bit tighter, that I just decided that I would tighten these screws to the point where I thought they were about to strip out or were in the process of stripping out, and they actually have stayed tight. And so this is what I've been used to before I demonstrate this. This was the first kind of knife that had this little finger flick lever, which I like because it makes it easier. You can, if I can do this on camera, you kind of flip it out like that, and then you have this nice little ridge. So if you're trying to poke through some plastic or something like that, that it prevents the knife from wanting to slip out of your hand. But what I didn't like was these serrations on this. If we compare that to the Kershaw is definitely much thinner by a significant margin. We can see that here. It's probably 20 to 25% thinner. And maybe about the same weight, maybe a little bit heavier, just because it has a steel body. Forgot what I was going to say there. What I really like is how they've rounded everything off. This little edge right here, when this is in your pocket, can bite in just a little bit, so I wish they would have rounded this off on the Harbor Freight. And on this Kershaw they have, and the fact that it's a bit thinner really makes it a nice kind of everyday carry pocket knife, because you hardly notice it in your pocket, and just all the smooth bevels, there is no kind of sharp edge. Even this top part of the back of the blade, they even round it off, so you don't have any issues there. The little thumb lever right there is actually made to be flush with the body so it doesn't stick out and want to get caught up, because it does have a spring assist. Getting to the spring assist, since it's been 5 minutes into this video, this is how it works. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. It has a little spring that helps flip the blade open. So you can just take this and just flick it with your finger, and bam, it just comes right out. Now, how that works is there is no spring all the way open. It starts about here, and there's been some criticisms of these style of, not the Kershaws, but any spring assist, because they have to carve out areas in both the sheet metal, and you can kind of see a little bit of that right there. Oh no, that's the screw. It's the other side where you can see it. You can kind of see where the mechanism is in there. So they have to cut out the metal, and they have to do some carving on the back of the blade. So there has been some comments about how the blades may not be quite as strong or durable as just a more traditional non-spring assisted. But they are just so convenient when you're in an awkward position, and you can just take and just touch it with your finger, and the blade just pops right out. That's pretty cool. And this is the first type I've ever seen like this. It locks in place via, this isn't a liner. A liner would be like this, where you actually have a outer shell and then there's an inner metal liner where it locks. But on this unit, it's the same thing, except for the liner and the body are all the same piece. And so you just push that back and then flip it back closed. What I do like about Kershaw, or at least this one, is some nice attention to detail. They do have a hole for a lanyard, which is nice. Some little drilling, so that kind of looks cool with the belt clip. To help keep the blade in the closed position, since it does have a spring, they actually have a detent, which goes into, if we can just see it there, a little divot that's inside the blade. But what I really liked about this detent, it isn't one of those situations where they've just stamped the piece of sheet metal and made a bump on the back. If we actually open this up, it actually has a pretty good spring. If we're just vertical like this, it will still flip right open. It may be a little hard to see inside there. You can see the little ball. It's actually a ball bearing that's been stuffed into a hole, so it'll actually last a decent amount of time. Another thing that I liked is where they placed it. It will inevitably, as you can see, leave a little scratch mark on the blade as you open and close it, and over time that gets worse. What's nice is they've strategically hidden that, so when you open this up, there's just a little bit of visibility of that scratch, and I thought that was actually pretty impressive. Something else that kind of sets this apart is they do, laser etch the grade of steel right on the blade, even though it is Chinese. There's the model number and an R.J. Martin design. I don't know anything about knives. And then, of course, they call it the Kershaw SpeedSafe. Now, the one thing I was going to mention about the thumb lever is this is not intended, and it seems obvious, this thumb lever is not really intended to open the knife. It is just so short and so difficult that you can't really get a good purchase on it. And even though it's nice and sharp and well made, you can't really grab it. What it's really designed for is you're in a situation, maybe it's sticky, where it's kind of stuck in a partially open position. If we can get this to focus, and then you use that little thumb lever just to finish opening it up all the way. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch, and overall it was actually more intelligent than I thought. The one real issue I could see with this knife, flick that open again there, is the way they carved this out to make it thin enough to act as a lock liner. Seems fine, and when the belt clip is in this position, it's pretty good, because if you push this over too far, the belt clip will prevent it from wanting to get bent outwards. But this is definitely the weak spot. If you move the belt clip up here, or in particular on the back side, and maybe you're wrenching on something with this, trying to pry open some packaging or something, you could easily twist, and then without this belt clip right here to support this, you could bend this thing way out, and then you have to try to bend it back to get it to actually act as a liner lock. And I could see that becoming an issue, especially if the belt clip's on the back side, where this thing gets bent out, maybe it gets caught on something, gets bent out real far. It can make the knife very difficult to use, and almost, it would permanently ruin it. And so that's the one criticism is maybe they should have used a little piece of metal in there as a liner lock instead of relying just on the body, because when you move the belt clip around, this thing is really just floating around and can easily get caught up and bent. And so that would be, it's a $20 knife, so I'm not complaining. It seems to be great quality. It's surprising how expensive a lot of knives are, you know, even in the $20 range where they're just junk. That's why I like this Harbor Freight so much, as it seemed to be a good value. Well, this Kershaw also seems to be a pretty decent value. It's a better brand than the Harbor Freight or the Harbor Freight's Gordon. Even though I do like the stainless steel body Gordon, I like this one better just because it's really more tuned for kind of everyday use, just because it's thinner. And then they paid careful attention to making sure just every edge on the whole thing is just really nicely rounded. There's lots of nice little detail in this. They do have a little bit of, I don't know if it's called stippling or, and some people have commented, and I've reviewed knives so rarely that I forgot all the special terms. But they do have a little bit of texturing there, and they have a little bit of texturing right on that thumb lever, which I do appreciate. So it's real easy just to grab this. I mean, it's super easy to activate. Here's my pinky, and you just, as soon as you get it past that little ball detent right there, it just wants to pop right on open. And I do like the thumb lever because it really, you get this little hook here, so it's really nice. It prevents you from having to worry about your hands slipping up on the knife and, you know, cutting your fingers off when you're trying to poke through some of the bulletproof packaging that products are shipped with today, or shipped in, I should say. And the fact that it doesn't have any kind of serrations or anything like that. I like just having a more, you know, standard and normal kind of knife blade. They also have this kind of interesting bow right here on the top, and I realize that's kind of nice because it's a place for your thumb to kind of sit if you're trying to cut some heavy material, maybe some pieces of rope or something like that, or you're whittling wood. Anyway, I think I babbled on long enough in this review, but I had just saw this at the store, picked it up, and really was pretty surprised. I thought for $20, this is actually something that's pretty nice. The way it's so flat and rounded, you hardly notice it in your pocket when you're leaning over or any of that kind of stuff, so I really appreciated that. And then the handiness of that spring assist is so neat, you know, and it always kind of impresses people when you bring out a knife and it just flicks open like that. They always say, is that a switchblade? I actually showed this to one friend and he thought this was a switchblade or a stiletto. I'm like, no, those are very different. Those are daggers with blades that shoot in and out from the body. But this is the next closest thing, which is a spring assisted, and they are pretty neat, you know. Instead of having to do the whole wrist flick thing to get them open. And even though this Harbor Freight does work smoothly, and I will admit this one has stayed real tight. Even you can see how much wear I have on this. These are just so convenient, even in your awkward hand. You know, I'm right-handed, so my left hand's awkward, and it's still just as easy to grab it and just pop it right on open. And in the packaging, I'll say this as a final piece, it did include this little plastic cover over the edge of the blade. Let's be careful here when I put this on because I don't want to cut myself trying to... Which way did this go? Oh, it went this way. So I had this little cover, and I haven't seen if this will actually fit in the knife with the cover on. No. Some brands, they actually design these covers where you can actually still have them on while it's closed and in your pocket. None on this Kershaw. Anyway, that's about it for this review. I just picked up this little pocket knife and thought it was pretty cool being spring assisted, and I've never had one of these before. So I wanted to, you know, do my 2 cents on it. And for a little thin pocket, kind of everyday carry pocket spring assisted knife, I would actually recommend this. It seems really nicely built. For me, I'm going to leave the belt clip where it is so I don't have to worry about having any issues with the liner lock getting, you know, bent outwards too much. And just the way that they had careful design attention to making it just so rounded and so smooth that any kind of sharp edges that want to get caught up on anything or pinch you when you're leaning over or working when this is in your pocket. And its thinness is really nice. And then just the spring assist just makes it super convenient. And I'm realizing how convenient that can truly be, because you can be in a situation where you're trying to hold something and you need to make a little cut on something, and maybe it's a little awkward and you can't. You can actually have the knife kind of held in an awkward position like this and make sure to be careful, and you can just take that lever and bump it against something, you know, against a piece of wood or whatever you're standing next to get the blade to pop open. That's something it's going to be much more difficult in any kind of non-spring assisted knife. Anyway, that's the end of this review of the Kershaw Zing SS 1730 SSX spring assisted everyday carry pocket knife. I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to the Catus Maximus channel. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.